Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. In the last video, we learned how to modify elements in the DOM, changing text, attributes, styles, and classes using JavaScript. Today we're going a step further, learning how to create new HTML elements from scratch and remove them dynamically. This is fundamental for building interactive websites, like adding items to a list, showing or hiding components, or creating modals. By the end of this video, I'll show you how to create new elements with JavaScript, insert them into the DOM, and remove them dynamically. Let's get started. Now let's start with a simple HTML setup. I have a div container and it's linked to a JavaScript sheet that we can see here. And what's happening is we can, for one, we can go ahead and let's comment this out and we can view, in the browser, we have the document and it's just empty. We have essentially just an empty container that we can't see in the browser just yet because we don't have any items we want to add to it. Now, to add items, we are grabbing that container by its ID, and then we're going to use what's called createElement to first make up the element we want to add. Then within that element, we are adding some text because we know that nodes come in all different shapes and sizes. We have node elements, node comments, and node text. And in this case, we're adding a text node within the element of paragraph. And then lastly, we're going to use .appendChild to insert that element on the page. And when we go back into the browser, we can see that it says this is a new paragraph. And so we are now adding elements with JavaScript. So what exactly is happening? Well, we use createElement to create a new paragraph, but it's not in the DOM yet. It's just on our side with the JavaScript. We set its content with text content, and we were in the last video we talked about how text content is just text. It doesn't deal with HTML like inner HTML does. And then we're appending this as a child. So essentially we are inserting this into the container. And so now we're seeing this is a new paragraph in the browser. We can customize this even further. And we're going to be using, for one, you can use set attribute. So we're setting the attribute, we're giving it an ID of intro. We're adding a class of highlight with class list. .add, and then we're doing some inline styles and changing the color to blue or the text to blue. And we can see those adjustments. We look at the console. We can go ahead and see that we've got that ID of intro now. We've added the inline style color of blue, and we're good to go. And so that's what's happening here. Now, if we hop back into Visual Studio Code, we can dive into this a little bit further. And I want to mention, we used appendChild. So we used appendChild, but there's other ways that you can add elements to your browser. So it's not just appendChild. You also can use .prepend. So in addition to appendChild, you can use prepend, and that's going to add an element to the beginning. We also have the option to, in addition to those two, appendChild and prepend, we can even use insertBefore. And so if you have two elements that you're adding, in this case, we're adding a second element, second paragraph with the text of I'm first, we're using .insertBefore to place that element in front of the prior element that we just used. And so essentially, the first space is going to put the new element, and then the second space here is going to refer to the reference element. And so what we're doing is inserting the new element before the reference element. And we can see that in the browser. We're seeing that it says I'm first, and then this is a new paragraph. All right. Now, the last thing I'll mention here for this sandbox is we can also remove elements. And to do that, you have two ways of doing it. You can do it from the parent, which is that container, and you can do .removeChild, and that's going to get rid of that element. So we just see I'm first. Or in the modern method, you can say is you can just go directly to that new element .remove and do it that way. So it's going to remove itself from the browser, and we just see I'm first again. So those are the two ways. .removeChild, use it from the container, or new element .remove is the other way. Now, one thing to keep in mind here is to just make sure that the element is already in the DOM. Otherwise, .remove won't work. So if new element's not there, .remove's not going to work. So just keep that in mind. Now I want to, as a final practice, I want to go through a practical example where we add and remove some list items. And I have that in Sandbox 2. Essentially what we have here is just a little bit more expanded on what we did in Sandbox 1. We have an empty list this time, an unordered list, and we have a button to add items to this list. And currently there's nothing there. And let's go ahead and first comment all this out so we can, before we get started. And if we hop in here, you'll see that we have add item in an empty list, that we have no items yet, so we can't see anything. So if we go ahead and hop into the JavaScript, there's a couple things here, and I want to break this down, essentially what's happening. And so let's first uncomment this. Now, to get started, we want to grab from the HTML, or from the browser really, we're grabbing the item with the ID of add button. So we're grabbing the button and we're grabbing the list. Those are the two items we're grabbing. Once we have those, we can work with them in JavaScript. So we're grabbing add button here. We're grabbing the ID of list. Now that we have both, we can work with that in the JavaScript. And let's go ahead and break down what this is doing. So we have this next part here. We're taking the button we see in the browser, button in the HTML. We're saying add event listener, and we're adding a click. So when someone clicks on this button, we want to do something, and that's that next part here. That's that function we're running. We're running a function when it's clicked. And essentially there's a few items that we're doing in this function. So for one, we're creating the item, then we're adding the remove button, and then we're adding this to the browser. So we create the item, we create the remove item, we give the remove button some functionality, and then we're adding the items, and that's what we're seeing here. Document.createElement, it's a list item. We're giving it some text. That's step one. We got the item. Now let's add the remove button in case we want to get rid of it. We create the remove button. So create element button, give it some text, same exact thing. And then we're adding a little bit of inline styles here. So this is part two. Then we made the item, we made the button. Now let's give the button some functionality. So we're adding an event listener. And on click, we want it to item.remove. We learned that item.remove. Now that the item's there, we can remove it with .remove. And then the final step, did the item, did the remove button, gave the remove button some functionality. Now we want to add those to the browser so they actually can be seen. So we're doing item.appendChild and list.appendChild. And so when we append these items, we're going to see what we're going to see. So we're appending the remove button to the item. And so once it gets added to the item gets added to the list, and once the item gets added to the list, it's also going to include the remove button because it's been appended to the item. So we'll hit add item and add another one like so. And then we can also remove them like so. And so what's happening is we click to add an item, and a new list item is created with the text plus the remove button. Clicking the remove button essentially eliminates that item from the list. And this is, just a basic example of setting up a to-do list. Maybe you want to set up a shopping cart, or even if you later want to get into, dynamic forms. This is, a stepping stone to getting into that. So just really a quick recap. Essentially what we learned is, if you want to create an element, you're going to use document.createElement. You want to set the text. We learned in this video and the last one to use .textContent or inner HTML. If you want to insert or remove an item on the page, you can use, for inserting, it's appendChild, prepend, or insertBefore. Remove is either .remove on the element or on the parent. You could do parent.removeChild and then specify the child. You can update the attributes using setAttribute. You can add a class using classList.add. and you can style with inline using .style. Whatever the property name is. And that's how you create and remove elements using JavaScript. We learned how to build elements from scratch, insert them into the DOM, and remove them interactively, even with buttons. This gives you the power to build responsive dynamic UIs without relying on frameworks. In the next video, we'll take this a step further and get even more interactivity by learning how to respond to user actions using event listeners. If this helped, be sure to like, subscribe, and hit the bell so you don't miss the next one. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next video.